guys hear me in the back?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, Dylan and Ryan, for inviting me to speak. Thank you to my friends Sig and Obi for coming to support me. Imagine you wake up in the middle of the night, you hear loud noises outside, and you're unsure what's going on. You stumble to the front door with sleep still in your eyes, and you open it, and you see men with AK-47s in the middle of the street fighting each other. This is my dad's story. My dad went through the civil war in Somalia in the early 90s, and he fled Somalia to Kenya. My dad ran there. His father, he asked him to come with, and he refused. He said, I would rather die in my hometown than leave. So my dad had to go to Kenya by himself, and he made it to the Kakuma refugee camp. My dad had nothing but the shirt on his back, and he hustled blankets that people left behind that left the refugee camp just to make it. One of the earliest memories I have in Kenya is a funeral procession. I have another memory where this was like one before. A memory of ants marching sugar around. My mom and dad had me in that refugee camp, and I remember riding around in a box on my dad's bike. My mom had my first sister when I was about 4. My dad cheated on my mom and had my half brother. My mom took an axe to my dad's knee. Mom and I were in jail together. We had somebody visit us who was friends with my mom, with my dad, and she turned him away. When I was about 5, we won a lottery to come to the United States. I remember being celebrated and taking a bunch of cookies and biscuits with us. When I was 5, we went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was cold. English was foreign to us. My dad biked to work in the winter. We were poked and prodded by the immigration officials to ensure our parents were taking care of us efficiently. I remember roller skating in gym. We didn't have that back home. I remember lying in the grass and watching the clouds. I don't remember that from Kenya. And I went to my first museum when I was about 6 years old. From 7 to 11, I started to grasp English. I was a very bad student at first until I fell in love with reading. I read like a monster and spent so much time reading in the evening and night that my parents took my books away. I was motivated to read mostly through a program that rated books by points. The bigger the book, the more points they had. The points were used for pizza parties or little rewards. I got my first computer and learned a lot about them technically. This was the catalyst for my love of computer science. I would fix computers for my family, friends, and this is also the time in my life when the physical and emotional abuse was at its worst at home. I was beat with belts and metal spoons, degraded verbally, and neglected emotionally. From 12 to 16, I had a dream of being a computer scientist. My dad owned 2 businesses in town. He owned a grocery store and a car dealership, and I worked for my dad basically against my will. I was a cashier at a grocery store, an accountant, manager, etc. of these 2 businesses. I spent a lot of time alone in the store, spoke to mainly older people, and missed out on a lot of time with my siblings. Neglected things like doing chores because I was so overworked, but I still managed to be a good student. I spent most of my free time playing games and staying up late at night. My dream was to be a professional at esports and study computer science in college. Most of my friends were from the internet because I had so little time to invest in friendships. My parents were always against me having friends. When I was 16, I smoked marijuana for the first time. It was behind a friend's apartment, and I didn't even get high. I kept trying it and eventually fell in love. Started taking money from my mom to spend on weed. Anybody relate? Spent most of my time after school smoking weed and hanging out with other stoners. I started to hang out with a completely different crowd. One day, a friend of mine asked me to help him sell weed, and I was game. He got robbed the first sale he made, and I ended up doing most of the work and started doing it on my own when I got the hang of it. I have a memory from when I was around 16. I blacked out from smoking weed concentrates and woke up at my house with no recollection of driving home. At 16, I started using alcohol. I tried alcohol for my first time at a house party, started drinking every once in a while, but always in excess. At 16, I tried acid for my first time at a party. It was a very uncomfortable and very dark place. During this acid trip, I had my first bout of psychosis. I was somewhat aware but felt trapped in my own mind, and my actions seemed out of my control. I really scared my friend because he thought it would be permanent. He slapped me to try and wake me up. We ended up calling his mom, and she came to the rescue. I went over to his house and had no recollection of who I was or where I was. He put on BoJack Horseman on the TV, and I started to believe that was my entire life. I couldn't remember my name or my family. At 16, I got my first job at McDonald's. My dad got upset with me, no longer working with him, and took the car he gave me away from me, so I felt stuck and like I didn't have an outlook. My identity revolved around mostly work. I also worked at Walmart. After the confrontation with my dad, where he took my car away, I decided to put my all into selling. I felt like my ability to live a normal life was taken from me. I started selling weed very frequently and would come home every day and solicit sales. At 17, I became truant from school. I stopped going to school at first because I was hungover from smoking weed every night, and eventually because of depression, not being able to wake up in the morning. At 17, I gave up on school. My senior year, I decided I was doing well enough selling weed that I could do that full time and not go to college. I lost my passion for college and didn't really have an outlook that felt good and promising. At 18, I moved to Mankato with my friend. I sold weed every day and got a new job. We struggled to make ends meet, but did our best. At 18, I woke up every day to sell drugs. I met a friend who I started to go halves on with weed, and it allowed us to move up the ranks quickly. At 18, I was robbed at gunpoint. I had led somebody into my house who I was supposed to sell to, and I showed up with 3 other people who had guns. I was put against the wall. I saw my roommate in a towel. He just got out of the shower, so it was pretty startling. They made me lay on the futon and told me to look away. I had a cold gun pressed to the back of my neck. I pleaded with them not to take my phone because I needed it to solicit sales and I couldn't afford another one. They stole my camera my girlfriend bought me as a birthday present, and they stole all of my money. From 19 to 20, I started trafficking drugs between state lines, started receiving shipments of weed in the mail. The first package was seized, but I continued anyway. That was the only package that was ever seized. I met a dude in the cartel and had up to 100 pounds coming in the U-Haul boxes at a time fronted to me. I fronted most of my work to my friends and was able to make a lot of quick money that way. It all culminated in me waking up in a hotel with a man who I didn't know that well, but was my plug, not having showered for multiple days, and having to pay $70 that I owed him. I started having wax shipped in and made really good money. Started growing weed in Colorado and shipping it back. Got screwed by my grower. Went on a snowboarding trip to Colorado with one of my friends who sold. Best time of my life. Went to California and had my first manic episode. I went racing on the highway from LA to San Francisco. When I came home from Denver and I took a bunch of mushrooms and had my second bout of psychosis. I felt like I was stuck in this Denver airport for hours. I didn't realize I was home. My friends had to call my girlfriend to help. I woke up to a wet bed, but her by my side cuddling me. When I was 20, I woke up one day at the height of my trafficking, utterly depressed, stopped answering my phone, and locked myself in my room for months. I would only come out to grab a pizza I had ordered. I had zero hygiene. I was so ashamed of what I let my life become and how much of it was ruled by money that I just gave it all up. At 20, I was robbed by a friend who owed me money. I had some personal mushrooms, he took those too, and my roommate, another roommate of mine, stole my iPad. At 21, I started to become agoraphobic. I moved in with my parents and I couldn't leave the house. It gave me so much anxiety and I stayed inside for months. At 21, I met a vegan activist online and he informed me about the practices of animal exploitation and I went vegan shortly after. I got into Stoic philosophy while I trafficked, but after becoming vegan, I truly gained a passion for philosophy and started self-studying ethics. I met a lot of good friends. I've been vegan for 4+ years. At 21, I started to traffic mushrooms from Colorado. I didn't go far, so I started giving it away for free and taking it myself. From 22 to 23, I had another bout of psychosis. I took mushrooms, and this was when the war in Ukraine and Russia started, and I thought that we were being attacked, and I lost my mind. During those same years, 22 to 23, I had another bout of psychosis. I blacked out after taking mushrooms, and I had a sort of spiritual experience where I thought I had met God. At 23, I got my first gun. At 23, I was diagnosed with bipolar. At 24, depression really kicked in. At 24, I was arrested for shoplifting while manic. I stole a bunch of stuff at Shields and was arrested. At 24, the police raided my house, took my guns, and found mushrooms in my home. I was charged with first-degree felony sales, first-degree felony possession, and second-degree possession. I had a pound left over from my trafficking days. At 24, I found these rooms in jail. I started by calling myself an alcoholic addict before believing it. I met Rich and Gary. The rooms felt very comfortable and everyone acted like themselves there. And there was no false sense of bravado. At 24, I went to inpatient treatment at North Star Regional. It's pretty alright. Now at 25, I'm an outpatient, and I'm going to the rooms in the real world. Just for today, remember that your past does not define who you are today. Just for today, remember to honor your story. Just for today, remember that you are meaningful. Just for today, remember that you are strong and capable. Just for today, remember that recovery takes bravery.